using the mic because I'm reading what I wrote. And Mark was right, I can't see anyone, so know that there are human beings out there.
We're here.
So, in our culture, as we grow up beyond infancy, we're told to stand on our own 2 feet, to be independent and self-sufficient. We're told not to be needy. As adults, when we hug someone casually, we're careful not to be the one left holding on when the other person's let go. You know that feeling when you're the one still holding on and you feel a little embarrassment or maybe even a little shame? We learn to hide our vulnerability and our need. We've been taught to value independence over interdependence, competition over cooperation, and we're supposed to be winners, which means that there have to be losers. As a culture, we're becoming increasingly isolated. Studies show that over 25% of people report that they're lonely. And levels of social engagement have decreased in recent decades. Recent research has shown that isolation has actually become a national health crisis. And what that means is that lives are actually shortened as a result of loneliness at equal rates to obesity.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Decades ago, I saw a documentary film about Mother Teresa, who created these centers for the people who are dying around the world, the poorest of the poor. And she came to New York and to San Francisco and opened centers in this country. And journalists asked her, why are you opening centers for the poorest of the poor in the richest nation on earth? And she said very poignantly, she said, America suffers from a poverty of loneliness. I was a sensitive young boy growing up in the South in the 1960s who began to realize that I would be gay. You know, when I was really young, it was just that I preferred certain things that girls identified with. But later I realized what that was going to mean for me. And I battled with a sense of being other and not fitting in. I feared being ostracized and humiliated by my peers, and I kept a secret from everyone I knew, including my family. I did not feel safe to be myself, and my connections in the world felt tenuous. I lived in fear that if you knew who I really was, you would reject me. What I longed for was to feel safe. I wanted to feel connected to myself, to others, to a sense of some spiritual power greater than myself. I wanted to express myself freely without shame. I wanted to make a difference in the world using my gifts and my talents, and I wanted to feel a part of, not separate. I believe that these are things that we all want, right? They're just deeply human desires and values. So what I want to share about with you tonight is a personal discovery that has helped me greatly on my own healing path and in helping to shape my work in the world. About 16 years ago, while I was meditating one morning, I had a vision. I never had a vision before, I've never had one since. The vision was that I saw myself hugging a friend for what seemed like a long time. When I actually tried hugging a friend for a long time, what I discovered changed the course of my life. In the comfort of this embrace, which ended up lasting 2.5 hours, I felt a profound sense of comfort and connection and openness. All my fear evaporated. And I remember thinking, the way that I'm feeling right now, this is who I really am. And for those of you who may be wondering, this was not romantic and it wasn't sexual. After that first experience, I couldn't believe that everyone in the world didn't know about this. I mean, we've all been hugged countless times, right? How is it that we didn't know about hugging like this? I tried it with other friends who were open-minded enough to try strange experience with me to see if the same thing would happen, and it did. Those same qualities of deep well-being, connection, and comfort were present each time. So I developed a format. There were two simple ground rules. One is no one was allowed to feel physically uncomfortable at any point. And two, if you felt sexual arousal, you are to do anything about it, just breathe. As infants, we learn that we're safe to be in the world by being held by our caretakers. We're fed while being held. We spend hours there every day in the beginning of our lives. It's almost like being in the womb again, but this time we're on the outside. Having adequate, nurturing touch is so essential to our well-being that if we're not held enough as infants, we don't develop proper immune systems and we may even die. Lack of what we call contact comfort in infancy is experienced as extreme deprivation and may have lifelong consequences. That was widely observed with children who spent the first couple of years of their lives in orphanages in Eastern Bloc countries. And they suffered emotional deprivation. They were fed, but they weren't held, and the consequences were dramatic for families who adopted those children and saw what they were up against. Our bodies are physically designed to thrive from being held. The emotional bonding hormone, oxytocin, is generated abundantly when we're held. That's part of why mothers experience being so in love with their new infants. They're actually high on oxytocin. Being held is also a language. It says, you're safe with me. I want to be here with you. You're not alone. Powerful messages for well-being. Some research study actually studied adults who hugged for a mere 30 seconds. Levels of oxytocin and serotonin were increased, measurably increased. Blood pressure levels went down, and the stress-based chemical cortisol also was reduced. So the message here is that we actually need to be held. It's good for us. It's a tool for well-being. So as a result of my epiphany those years ago, I began to see clients in private practice. I called it hug therapy. There were people in my life that thought I'd gone a little crazy when I started doing this, but I felt guided from a really deep place, and I followed my gut. So my 2-hour sessions include 20 minutes of talking and connecting conversationally, followed by 90 minutes of holding. Some clients come for the first session out of curiosity and a sense of openness to trying something new. Others know that they need more physical and emotional contact in their lives. Some clients come to have a place to feel and grieve. And then there are those who have a history of early trauma related to touch. Being held in this way can be deeply therapeutic and healing. I also do small hugging workshops. What I see in my workshops is that being held, even by someone you may have never met before, can produce that deep sense of comfort, presence, and well-being. Though newcomers to the experience fear hugging for such a long time, my workshops last for 3 hours. By the end, I usually don't want it to end. And my slogan, which I will someday print on a t-shirt, is there's never a good time to stop. Adulthood does require that we learn to take care of ourselves, to work and earn to support ourselves and our families. But this notion that we should hide our vulnerability and our need from others, we do this at our peril. We should give as much attention to conversations about interdependence as codependence. Yeah. My hugging work has shown me the value of shared vulnerability. It's a reciprocal event where we often both experience giving and receiving at the same time. It reconnects us to our shared humanity, where we're more present to the fact that what we share in common is much bigger than what divides us. So what would I like for you to take away from this today? First, that reciprocal touch, including hugging and being held, is not just a cute idea. It's a vital resource for all of us that in our culture we have become separated from the knowledge of. It can help reconnect us to the sense of support and connection that we need to thrive as human beings. Secondly, being held fosters a sense of shared vulnerability, which is not a weakness, it's a strength. It actually takes courage to feel all that we feel. When we do it with one another, it literally can restore us to a sense of the goodness of life. Being held is an antidote to loneliness, depression, and isolation. And reciprocal touch is like nutrition. We don't just need it once, we need it often. So do you need to be held for 90 minutes by a stranger? Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe you can start with asking someone who cares about you to hug you for longer than 10 seconds when you've had a hard day. Maybe it looks like you seeing a friend in need and offering to hug them and staying long enough to breathe and for them to feel your comfort. It may feel awkward at first, but if you stay long enough, you'll begin to feel healed by it. So today, as I look over the landscape of my life and my history, I've come to know that my most deeply held value is this: shared vulnerability creates deep connection and mutual empowerment. And finally, my big vision, and it came to me the very first day that I hugged in this transformative way, is that all people should know and have access to the comfort and care of an unhurried embrace. Thank you.